Hey everyone, welcome back to the Law of Attraction Tribe podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie Keith, and today I have Chris Sansone, PhD, who is a life leadership and spiritual transformation coach and a certified past life regression guide, which is super cool. He has 28 years of experience supporting people through life defining challenges and seasons of change. His work invites individuals, couples, and groups to listen beneath the noise of daily life, uncover what the soul is truly longing for, and gently heal the old patterns that keep them small. With a PhD in human development, a coaching certification through the Coactive Training Institute, training in trauma response, and certification in past life regression therapy, Chris blends grounded developmental insight with spiritual practice to create meaningful, transformative experiences. He's also the author of Longing, A Pilgrimage to Your Quiet Power Within, which I really want to dive into on today's episode. So, Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Stephanie. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm looking
Yeah, we
forward.
were talking a little bit before we started recording, and I was telling you that finding your purpose and talking about stepping into your authenticity is something that we talk a lot about here on the podcast. And I know your book goes into this. So, in Longing, you've written about the potency of a person living their life purpose. Yet, I feel like when you ask most people, if you're just to go up to someone and say, "What's your life purpose?" It's like, you get a pause or they look at you like a deer in headlights. So, from your perspective, why is that? Like, what's getting in the way of knowing our life purpose, and how do we get more clarity around that?
Boy, such a good question because that's really what I predominantly focus on in writing Longing. And I think part of the reason why there's that kind of obscurity is we're not often nurtured into ourselves, meaning that there isn't a familiarity with what's going on at the deeper levels of our being. And therefore, we don't have a deeper understanding of who we are and why we're here. And every life has at least one purpose, if not multiple dimensions of purpose. And it's kind of the glaring thing that we miss as human beings. And by virtue of comparison to our other aspects of self, like if we look at our intellect, our rational mind, ability to think and make decisions and exercise good judgment, we look at our emotional side, the ability to have sensitivity and compassion and empathy and understand who we are at a deeper level through our emotions and the physical. We have pretty well acquainted ourselves with all those three aspects of ourself, but yet there's this most powerful aspect of ourself that for some reason or another, our Western culture, I emphasize the Western culture, and this isn't exclusive to, the Western Hemisphere, but there's a predominant kind of ignorance, if you will, and I don't mean that in a diminutive term, but a lack of awareness of that deeper aspect that is so powerful. It outmeasures all of the others combined by yards, by miles. And why we ignore that, I think there's lots of cultural conditioning around that.
Oh, I agree completely. I talk about this a lot, but I feel like especially in the way our school system's set up and just our society in general, but especially the school system, because you kind of learn this as a young child to not really tune into your intuition or your creativity or things that I think are clues that kind of guide you towards your purpose. We're taught like, yeah, that's an extracurricular thing, or that, focus more on the logical side of the brain, and which is fine. Like you said, we're great with logic and reasoning, but I do think we kind of learn to ignore that other side for the most part, and then we don't trust it as we grow into adults, and then it just we're kind of stuck at that point, you know?
I agree. I agree. Another way to explain that is this over-identification with what we term ego or, the small s self, uh, and any other ways that we want to describe that. Uh, that gets so much attention. It gathers all kinds of experiences, and and ways of being in the world that basically solidify it. And why that happens, I think it's part of our human nature and part of our purpose for being here on this planet at this time in this incarnation of the bodies that we have, is we are here to learn to not disidentify with that, but to move it aside and say, okay, great. Ego, small self, you have a purpose. I need a personality in order to engage in the world and have relationships and contribute. But you're not it. But we get so over concerned with that. And I think fundamentally it happens at the life beginning, at the start of our lives, where it's based on survival and affiliation and learning how to be and be successful in a culture that requires us to survive and to connect. And that so there's this big storyline that we develop from infancy that we need to be this way in order to fit in and survive. And then we forget all about that other aspect of ourself. And yet, the longer that we do, and this is something I found out in writing longing and in my prior teaching to longing, is the more that we ignore that, the harder and more difficult and complicated life becomes.
Mm. It's interesting when you said as children, we learn these things to survive. And I had um, Helene Wabe from the Institute of Noetic Sciences on a few
Hmm.
weeks back, and she said something very similar because we were talking about consciousness and that we can have the ability to tap into so much more than just us. Like we're all interconnected. And her sort of theory was that the reason we're born and not able to just, recognize that is because we wouldn't be able to survive. Like we wouldn't be able to focus just on ourselves at that point. And so I see that and I think that makes so much sense. But then I also feel like in my personal life, the older I get, the more and more I realize sort of the hidden, like what's underlying everything, and that we are interconnected, and that it isn't just me, Stephanie, that there's, someone else really as like the observer of my life, if that makes sense.
Yes, and actually not to sort of better than,
Hmm.
competition. I want to point to levels of consciousness, and noetic science certainly indicates this throughout their writing and their practices and their teachings.
Hmm.
But it's also embedded in human development, which is what my doctoral degree is in, and integral theory is one of the better, I think, descriptors of this. When we talk about uh, moving into a certain level of development that we all start at as children, as babies. But then the life quest is to move up, is to ascend those levels of development. And you're indicating one of those higher levels where we reach this presumption, this working hypothesis that actually we're all created to be, yes, individuals, but we come from the same source. And we are of the same source. And essentially, we are one. That's a higher level of development, but excuse me, but that scares the crap out of the ego. If we are to say that, then the ego says, hold on a second. No, no, I'm at the top, or I'm different. This is not to diminish the importance of ego. But it's simply to put ego in the right domain so they can be successful. But the ego gets confused and wants to be known, wants to be seen, wants to be identified with, wants prestige, status, recognition, all that stuff to keep saying, I exist, I exist, I exist. But then when that's gone, I want more, I want more. And we just keep pouring it on until, like you're indicating with yourself, and certainly this has been the experience that I learned about more and more about others, is many of us are on a quest to bust that bubble, to really come to terms with what are we truly, and to enjoy that.
Hmm. Yeah. What's your sense on just the world right now? Do you feel like
Yeah.
more people are waking up to that? Because that's just my sense, but I'm always curious to see, has this always been the way? I know in Western culture it hasn't, but do you feel like there's something bigger happening now where more
Oh,
people are kind of curious about this and willing to look at things differently?
absolutely. And with enthusiasm, I believe that. And one of the indicators, other than research that I look at, cropped up during my early research portion of writing longing. And I got curious about this. I said, well, how many people are aware of this thing that I refer to as soul? There's lots of other descriptors for that. But how many people are actually open, that are curious about that aspect of their self and are making connection with it in a way that supports their life? So I went to the research. I'm a doctoral, in
Yeah.
human development. So I go to the research, right? And I find that at, for example, the Pew Foundation, they have excellent research on this. There's a trend from organized dogmatic type of belief systems that we hold in our religious practices, uh, to more of an open understanding about spirituality. And the category is called spirit SBNR, spiritual but not religious. This trend is moving rapidly away from organized dogmatic kinds of religions of enforced belief systems or committed belief systems to open exploration about the mystery of being human and looking deeper at the experience that we have. That trend is on the rise dramatically so. You talked about our current situation, what it looks like, right, in our population.
Yeah.
My estimation is we're somewhere near the 25% point, and that's going to be a tipping point where consciousness is influenced, the whole consciousness is influenced by that segment of awakened consciousness. And
Mhm.
and when we what we know about change is that right before a big thing happens, I mean, in our lives, right before we get married or move or have children or take a new job or whatever it might be, objections come up strong, hard, and loud, right? We resist. Oh no, oh no. In my coaching training, CTI referred to that as the gremlin or the voice of the saboteur. It comes in and says, "Oh no, no, you girl, you can't do this, buddy, you can't do that." And starts coming up with all these excuses. And we go, some of us back down from that, but some of us take that as information and move on or do our therapy around it. Uh, that kind of thing is exactly what's happening on an international level. The resistance is big and it's loud and it's strong and it wants to control and wants to take us back decades,
Mhm.
but it's on the wrong side of the movement. And we will see the trend evolve to a place of majority where more and more people are having conversations like this. I mean, I've been around enough to know that conversations have shifted. I mean, I
Yeah.
listened to my kids when they were 6 years old
Mhm.
talking about their relationships or the world around them. I was fascinated, even in their
Mhm.
humor. I said, I didn't think of this stuff till I was like 18. These guys are great. And it's just like this kind of new evolution that's occurring. And I'm optimistic. It's kind of hard sometimes when you look at the news day to day, but yeah.
Yeah. No,
I mean,
I
what
I
about you? Do you,
agree.
you see that?
I feel it deeply, and I do think we're near or at that tipping point, and there is that resistance. But I always look at it as like, nope, the good will prevail. Like people are waking up. You can't really stop it at this point.
Hmm.
But yeah, just speaking of kids, I'm like, as adults, I think we could learn so much more from them than they can from us when it comes to this. Like the other day, my 6-year-old, she always takes my phone and she'll record herself and like pretend that she's, on YouTube or whatever. And I was just doing my makeup, not really paying attention. And then I caught what she was saying, and she was explaining, like, sometimes it feels like you're in this body, but you're really not this body. You're
Oh
so
my
much
God.
more. And I was like, And so then when she was done, I like asked her and she kind of like was like, "Oh, I didn't know you were listening." I'm like, "No, it's nothing bad. Where'd you hear that?" She said, "I don't know. I just know it." And I'm like, "Wow." But she's sick. She hasn't had the learned, limiting beliefs and things that happen as we go through life. So she just like knows it and trusts it.
Yes.
Wow. It was a good
Yes.
lesson for me. Like, I need to
Yes.
listen to her more.
Well, and credit to you and the way that you're raising her. I assume this is true for your husband as well,
Mhm.
that there is a condition that you've established for truth and self-exploration, whether you say it overtly or not.
Mhm.
You're open to hearing her perspectives, and therefore she's open to explore. And this is all part of the conditioning process that keeps us away from that inner core that as I refer to as soul. People refer to it as the divine within or the light or source or my true self or essence, authentic self. It's got all kinds of names, but I refer to it as soul. When we're willing to listen to that and we present to our children that we are, and to others, that we are open to exploration, it happens. If we go back generations, there may not have been such openness. We
Mhm.
were taught early on to, read this and perform like that and walk like this and dress like that right from the beginning. And now I think there's a more human-centered approach to consciousness. That's a beautiful thing. I think that's evolving and unfolding. And now, what a great story with your daughter, 6 years
Yeah.
old.
Yeah, it makes me hopeful, for the next
Yeah,
generation. Like,
yeah,
okay, yeah, maybe we don't have to relive all these blocks and everything that,
yeah.
the rest of us did. Um, but I wanted to ask you, so when I heard your book, Longing, like that word, longing,
Mm,
I was like, oh, yes, like that.
mm.
It's like the word that obviously I know the word, but I couldn't put my finger on it. But I think it's the perfect word for this, where working with so many people, I'll hear them talk about, I'm just not happy with what I'm currently doing, for example, like my current job, my current situation. I should be happy. I should be grateful. Everything's going great. My life is great. I have nothing to complain about, but I just feel like something's missing, but I don't quite know what it is.
Yes,
It's longing, like it's that longing feeling. And the
yes.
problem is, I think we just automatically interpret it as there's something wrong with me. Why
Mm,
can't I just be happy and grateful? Why am I being negative? And we turn it into this, bad thing when really, what you talk about in the book is like this is a profound, quiet power.
yes, yes.
And so, how can we look at it and use that as more of a compass than just shaming ourselves, thinking, well, I'm just not being grateful. I'm not good
Oh my
enough.
gosh, yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah. I think what you just articulated is the profound wisdom behind my motivation to write this book. A longing came to me. I didn't decide, geez, I'm going to set out to write this book. I'd had enough accumulated years of teaching leadership development in organizations at a very high level, and then working with the Hoffman Institute and teaching their quadrinity process for some 9 years, being a parent and other experiences that I had all informed me. But there was that, just like you were just articulating, there was this experience that I was recognizing that no matter how happy, no matter how many transformative, revelatory experiences that I witnessed others have, there was still something that was unmet, yet unsatisfied, that would not be satiated in this lifetime. And I'll put it this way, with one exception, that we finally reach the complete ascension of our soul's path and we don't need to incarnate anymore. Then we're off. Yeah, we're off the earth grid.
Mhm.
No more earth school for us. But in the meantime, we do have that insatiability that is like a magnet pulling us toward what the soul truly wants, which is that deeper gratification that we can only achieve by connecting with that divine source within us. Like your daughter's description, we're more than the body. There's something here that's a mystery, and it's calling us into the mystery. And the call, and I don't know if you're acquainted with the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell's work, and yeah, the call is constant. It will constantly beckon us into that quest to, to understand the greater aspect, the greater totality of this experience of being human and being spirit in the body and what that is. And so psychotherapy can help us to clear so many of those old habitual ways that just get in our way. Or psychedelic experiences can open us up to the vision of a new reality. It won't create the reality. And I think that's one of the mistakes that people make is over reliance on the experience or the substance for the reality. We have to keep working toward it, working toward it. And that's what the longing is about, is pulling us into it. If we respond to it, great. We're on the path. We are making peace with that dissatisfaction that's eternal until we ascend, but we're there with it. We're one with it. And that's peaceful in and of itself. We don't have to solve it. We can be with it. And that's the beauty of understanding then that I can from here understand what my true purpose is.
Mm.
I know
Yeah.
it. I'm on it. I may not know it specifically, but I'm on it. I know where I'm going. I'm not sure. I know how I'm going to get there. I'm not sure exactly where I'm going, but I know how to get there.
Yeah.
Listen, listen. Yeah,
I
yeah.
like how you use the analogy of a magnet pulling you because
Mhm.
that's like I have felt that. It's like you can't explain
Mm,
why. You just know for whatever reason you're gravitating towards something.
mm,
And it
mm,
seems like the more you ignore it, the more harder
mm.
it's going to pull, you
Oh
know?
my gosh, yeah. Oh my gosh. On that point,
Hmm.
uh, I I wrote, I began writing Longing as a call. I didn't, as I said earlier, I didn't intend to sit down and write this book. It's unlike other things I'd done, scientific journals. I was published 3 times. I'd sit down and say, I'm going to do this kind of thing. I'm going to do this research and boom, and I'll submit it. And boom. And I started that way only after I was given a message, but that way didn't work. Uh, my soul had different plans for me. A little backstory on writing Longing is came during the onset of COVID. My father had just passed that December 2019. My mother was in hospice and would pass May of 2020. So in that brief 4.5, 5 months between, everything was shut down. I at that time was teaching for the Hoffman Institute. All in-person activities were ended in suspension, and I was home. It was February, and I had met with a trusted advisor. She's a medium, and Victoria had said, "Hey, I'm getting this image." She's channeling my spirit guides. She said, "They're showing me a vision of a book, and you are to write a book." And I said, "Oh, quite interesting. I never planned on that, but okay." And they said, "Don't," and she said, "Don't worry. The direction will come." Well, I did worry. And I got on my thing and I started, my achiever kind of, I'm going to make this happen and I'm going to be the researcher. So I started pulling all the, human development theory books down and ordering all the new ones and pouring over this material and ended up with a pretty nice piece of research on current human consciousness. I get back with Victoria about 3 months later and she goes, they're giving me the stop sign. You're doing this all wrong. All fine and good. You've accumulated some useful knowledge, but that's not what this book is about. You're to listen. So was a bit defiant and kind of a little discouraged. I said, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to try that. I haven't been a meditator since I was 18. I brought myself into a deep meditative state, got a tablet of paper and a pen, lay down on my floor one evening and said, okay, what? First thing that came? was a poem. I later titled it Begin, and I was told later by my guides that would be the start of your book, and it is. So I write this poem, of which I've never written before, and I began to write, and the writing kept coming. And it was coming in a flow state. I didn't know exactly what I was writing, but it felt good to put it on paper. I did that night and then successive nights for about 2 or 3 weeks and ended up with some 8 to 10 tablets filled with this writing. And then later attempted to understand it. There was a lot of redundancy and vagueness, but I was set on really putting this into a legible form. Ended up spending time in a small inn in Taos, New Mexico for about a week, transcribed it, began making sense of it, and the editing process would begin. But it came to me that this is exactly what I've been put on this planet to do. This is my mission to write this book, among other purposes. But I had a unique mission to do this. And I remember then coming back to a session with Victoria, who said, yes, they're giving you the thumbs up. That's it. You're on it. Now, to really make these grounded, these teachings grounded, they want you to interview some people and ask them about their experience about following their pull, their magnetic pull of longing. And I found 5 people, would have found more, but that was about what I had time for. And I think they answered the questions. But they had had adverse life experiences that ended up teaching them a new way of being in the world, opening themselves, cracking that resistance wide open to seeing a much deeper aspect and much richer aspect of who they are and the world and envisioning the world around her, envisioning a different totality of existence. And it was gracious and generous of each of them, and I learned a tremendous amount. And so I looked at that kind of evolutionary purpose of pain, of suffering in just that light, in an evolutionary one as opposed to one of misfortune.
Mhm.
And mistakes we made and blaming and all that stuff, but really looking at it as wow. And so there's a quotation that I included in the book from Yogananda, Paramahansa Yogananda, the author, meditator, teacher, and he said, pain is a prod to remembrance. And so I looked at pain differently as the opener, not the teacher, but the opener, the prod. Hey, there's something important here. Like we were talking about earlier.
Mhm.
Once we open to that, we quit resisting it. We quit trying to solve for it. We quit trying to cure it, but we open to it and we say, what? What am I here to learn? It takes on a whole new dimension.
Mhm. Yeah. It's so interesting because your experience writing the book sounds very similar to my experience with writing a book. I talked to my friend the other day who's writing a book currently, and she's like, it's the craziest thing. This is her first book. And she says, I'll be completely blocked. Like I don't know what I'm supposed to do next in the book. And she said, but I let it go and I go to bed. And when I wake up in the morning, I have my answer and I know exactly what I'm supposed to write. And
Yeah.
I think it's just your story. It shows us perfectly that it's not about forcing it. And again, I think that's our conditioning. Well, I have to go and do the research and logically make sense of this book. And that is one way that we can do things. But man, getting in that state of flow, like you were saying,
Mm,
it feels good and
mhm.
it's different and it doesn't feel like hard work, right? You just kind of let your pen go to the paper and made sense of
Mhm.
it later.
Yes.
And I don't think we give ourselves permission to slow down enough to do that though, most of the
Yes.
time.
Isn't that the truth? And you were mentioning, like, our way, right? We're going to make something happen and so on. How did you learn that to let go, to
Yeah.
release?
Well, I learned it the hard way, where the biggest lesson on letting go and just trusting actually came from after I had my first daughter for 10 years, couldn't get pregnant and thought, it's just never going to happen for me. Finally got fed up with the constantly, you know, worrying, wondering, whatever. And I went to see a fertility specialist and I thought, okay, like he's going to know, he's going to be able to fix this. We're doing things the logic, this is the next logical step. And he just sat me down and was like, I am not going to do this because of there was a health risk and it's too dangerous and you just should be happy and grateful that you have one daughter. And so that night, the whole ride home, I was devastated. And finally, like that night, I just told myself, I'm going to just cry and get it all out today. And then I'm done. I've spent 10 years worrying about this. I'm just going to let it go. And if it's meant to be, it'll be. If not, then I believe there's a reason. There's for whatever reason, maybe if I had another baby, it would things wouldn't go well for it or for me. And I'm just going to trust and just let go. And that was the first time in my life where I really let my control freak like kind of go. And I really did. I shut the door and I said, I'm hands are off, universe. Like you do what you need to do, but I'm not worrying about this anymore. And that was the month that I found out I was pregnant with
Oh,
no treatment, no
beautiful.
anything. And it was such a crazy thing. Like I couldn't explain it. The doctor, no one could explain it. And but I knew like that's my lesson.
Yeah.
That is true letting go. I mean, you can't get any more like of a true surrender than something like
Yes.
that. And so after I learned that lesson, of course, I still get into those modes where I want to control everything. And I have to remind myself, like, okay, when I try to control things, it feels hard, it feels stressful. Why don't I just take a step back and get
Mm,
quiet? And so for me, what
mm,
always works every single time without fail is I
mm,
go outside, has to be outside for a walk. And whatever I need, whatever question or wherever I feel blocked, I'll just kind of leave it up to like I'm letting go, like you figure it out and let me know. And by the end of my walk, I will
mm,
have either an answer or
mm,
even just a starting point of what to do next.
mm,
And it's happened over and over and over again that I just trust it
mm,
now. But I think it
mm,
took that lesson for me to really like see, okay, I can't control life. Like
mm.
I can't control everything, but I can, when I let go, I'm getting out of that desperate energy and I'm opening myself to receiving is the way that I look at it.
Mm. And I also would use the word invitation to
Mm,
describe your process.
yeah.
You are creating an invitation. Is that true?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I really am. That's again the perfect word to describe it. I never would have described it that way, but that really is the perfect word because
Mm,
I'll kind of set the intention of I'm feeling stuck. I can't logically make sense of this. So the way I say it is I'm leaving it up to you, universe. Like,
mm.
give me an answer. So it is kind of
Uh-huh.
an open question or open invitation.
Hmm.
But it's for it to come through, it's like I have to be quiet enough to hear it. And for me, that means, just put everything down. Stop. I don't need to listen to another podcast at this moment. I don't need to do another email. I don't need to worry about the laundry. You know what I mean? Like just go outside in nature with nothing on my mind, let it all go so I can make space for it to come in.
How beautiful. Yeah, how exemplary of what I talk about as the importance of stillness. Because that way of you connecting with your, I'll call it the higher self, the deeper self or soul,
Mhm.
is really an active invitation. We like the word invitation because it provides an opening.
Mhm.
There's something else that I'm noticing that is important in what you're doing, and that's the surrender to open, not to sort of forego or submit, give up. It's actually to give in to surrender to something bigger, more powerful, wiser than you are in the moment, and then receiving. So there's this kind of inquiry that you set as well, where you're making it very clear about here's my concern. I need some help. Now would be a pretty good time, or in the morning, please help. And so you're opening it up and you're allowing. That is an active, a proactive way of approaching this. And what's odd, and when we contrast that with the way that we've been taught, which is make it happen, go fix it, go solve for it, do like I started out writing longing, go research it, do it, figure it out, make something blah, blah, blah. No, it's about opening to what is to be. And so, great example, I thought of an exemplary one of you becoming open to your daughter's coming into this world, really. I mean, in the bigger picture of things. And that timing had to be right. Your disposition had to be right. So you mentioned in my introduction here that I do past life regression work. I also do pre-life sort of planning. What is the
Mhm.
purpose? Why am I here? What's this incarnation about? And there's alignments that we make with other souls about timing and roles that we'll play in each other's life, when we will come, what we will do. And so that way of opening yourself to something bigger might have invited in an agreement that you had with another soul, your daughter, to be ready have the right disposition to receive her as she needed to be received. Who knows? It could have been something like that, but that would be one of the first places that I would investigate is you needed, perhaps, she needed, perhaps for you to let go, to surrender to something more powerful. Okay, now we're ready.
Okay, I have goosebumps because before, like all day today, when I was thinking about how we're going to record and like interview questions, I had a question, but I'm like, it's probably not going to flow with what we're talking about. But if I get the chance, maybe like when we're not recording, I'll ask him because I know you do the past life regression. But now what you just said, I'm like, okay, this is my cue to ask the question. It's more of a quick story that I'll tell you. So I have my second daughter then after this
Okay.
experience, right? And when I got pregnant, I just had this like knowing I'm like, I'm gonna have a boy. And I had a dream, like a very, very vivid dream of my little boy. And it wasn't like, it was a dream that was realer than real, like this is my boy. I couldn't see his face, but I could feel, how like every person in your life, you have like a certain feeling with them. I felt like this energy, like it was like, this is my son. And it was a dream, whatever. So I thought, I'm going to have a boy. They tell me, no, you're having a girl. I'm like, are you sure? Yeah, you're having a girl. She's born, she's a girl. And I'm like, that's so weird. Like, I was so sure it was going to be a boy. And when she was little, I was rocking her. And I had the most intense vision again of me rocking my little boy. And that same feeling, that same like sense of love. And I'm like, what the heck? And so I thought this must be maybe like a past life memory. And I had a little boy because at this point we were like, that's it. We're not going to have any more kids. So I'm like, it must be from a past life. And I just kind of left it at that. And again, the dreams started happening of my boy. And I started getting kind of like upset. I'm like, where is my son? Like, I know I had a son and like I can feel his energy, but I can't remember him. And so I keep thinking it's like a past life thing. Well, then I end up getting pregnant. Like quick, like
Oh,
it took 10 years to have Amelia. And then a few months later, I get pregnant and I had a boy. And my little boy, Aiden, this is the boy. Like I dreamt about him. I had a vision about him, the exact same feeling of him, that energy. It was
beautiful.
coming through. And so my
Hmm.
question that I wanted to ask you is like, you can work with past lives, but can we also do the
Hmm.
same work to know what's coming in some way or
Yes.
another?
Yes, yes, and I think it all starts with the inquiry. Like, what do you want to know? Like, if usually past life regression. is applied is and very useful in circumstances where stuff just keeps happening or
Mhm.
we keep feeling a certain way. It's almost, a semi-permanent. It feels like okay, I've done my psychotherapy, I've had my psilocybin experiences, I've had my meditation, all of the good work, but this one thing just keeps coming, this one dynamic or cycle keeps or point of view keeps coming back and it's limiting me. I'm uncomfortable with it. I need to do something. Where is this from? Then we go to past life. We find out perhaps the origin, the original intention or injury that resulted in you carrying this forward in this lifetime to solve,
Mhm.
to heal, to express, whatever the purpose of that might be. Pre-life planning is important to know what we are up to in this lifetime. What do we want? What is our purpose? What's our mission? What are we here to do? What are these relationships signifying in my life? What is the purpose of my having this son, Eden? And looking at that, oh, we are partnering. We're soulmates. And we
Mhm.
can have multiple soulmates. He's one of my soulmates. And Eden and I are here to do this. And he was very powerful. He wanted to make sure that you knew he was coming so you would be prepared and not never get in the way of you having Ophelia. But he was in line and he would fulfill that agreement that you had before coming into this incarnation.
Mhm.
So then you could look at purpose. How do we want to be with one another? Is there work that we still need to do to heal from a past life together? And really or we're here to have joy and fun and help each other enhance each other's lives in ways that are enjoyable.
Mhm.
And perhaps he might be a teacher to you, who knows? But that's where pre-life planning is most useful, is to look into purpose and intention. I mentioned mission, which is a variance of purpose, but there's other reasons, and we can understand those at a much deeper level. And I think it's just standalone, it's just fascinating, but it's also very useful, and
Yeah.
that's why we do it.
Is it the same, like what does that involve? Is that like hypnotherapy? You mentioned
Yes.
psilocybin. Like, are there
Yes.
different methods that
Yeah, I wouldn't use psilocybin. As I said, I think the psychoactive psychedelic drugs have had a positive effect in many regards, in as much as they are there to open the window,
Mhm.
and for us to put our heads out and see, and then for us to create what we need to create from there, to be active participants in our life, not to repeatedly go to the experience as an end in of itself.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
open the door, open the window. I need to step out and see, okay, that's where I need to be. Great. I'll do the work to get there.
Mhm.
Uh, to answer your question more specifically about past life regression, pre-life planning, there is a hypnotic aspect to it. And we could say that past life regression or pre-life planning is hypnosis with a steering wheel. We're going somewhere. We would like to know something. We have a destination. The destination might be this recurring, habitual, compulsive way that we'd really like to not have in our lives. How do we heal that? How do we make amends with that? Or a relationship or a conjuring of relationships that we keep doing over and over again. Why do we keep marrying into this kind of dynamic? And what do I need to do to heal that? Okay, great. Let's, with hypnosis, drop into a deeper state of being and access the deep subconscious where we can make contact with our soul, spirit, higher self, however we want, again, whatever term one prefers, to go to that place and open the psyche at that level. With pre-life planning, same thing. We're going into an induction experience, a hypnotic experience to access the subconscious and ask a different set of questions. So it's really where the difference is a temporal view. We going future? Are we going past? Where are we going?
Yeah.
Um, and the primary purpose of a past life regression is to heal, meaning to reclaim an aspect of soul that has been abandoned or squashed or or fragmented in some way, but to reclaim it, become more whole. That's the only purpose that I have for a past life regression experience.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, is there something if someone is at home right now and maybe they're not ready for a full, you know, a past life regression session, is there a practice that you recommend that people can do anywhere where they can
Yes.
even just open that invitation, like you were saying earlier?
Yes. Yes. What a great question. Because it doesn't have to be with a facilitator like myself. We can come to these deeper trance states and hypnotize ourselves. What else is meditation but a self-hypnosis? We're dropping into a deeper trance state, opening the mind, connecting with our subconscious, and we then relate to it in a way that we prefer to relate to it. We might ask questions, we might simply be, we might regenerate, whatever it might be. We can do that. We can do it ourselves through guided visualization. So I have some guided visualizations, by the way, up at Insight Timer that are conducive to this, to dropping into the deeper meditative state. And I actually have a course, does require a paid membership. Their fees are really low, but to have that experience of delving into purpose, I call it declaring your extraordinary purpose. But finding through a series of focuses, these different lessons that I give or focus points. What is it that I'm here to do? And really dropping into that. And it's a self-guided experience. I provide the structure. As I said, we can do this in our yoga practice, in our meditative practices, and in our dream states, our at night sleeping dream states provide beautiful access to our subconscious. And so we can facilitate these things for ourselves. I've done it several times. One of my go-to methods is evoking my spirit guides. I'm saying, guides, you drop into a deeper state, and I say, here's my thing. I'm low on energy. I'm finding I'm getting a bit perturbed and I'm losing energy. What I need help. What can you tell me? And I'll wait and I'll listen. And sometimes I receive it in a clear sentient way where I sense the answer, or audient, I might hear it in my mind's ear, or I'll see it in my mind's eye, clairvoyant. So these ways can come to us. We all have these capacities. I used to doubt that until I really dropped into learning and staying committed to learning it. We can do this ourselves. We can do it ourselves to answer your question. Any different ways. I'm learning a practice. I'll soon be certified in somatic channeling, which is an ancient form of connecting actively to our whole self. And it really works off the seven chakra system and moving the energy, the Shuma energy through the body and really having a sense of healing, unknotting our densities, and also opening the flow to what needs expression. And it's a beautiful practice, actually. That's another way of healing is again through somatic channeling. Again, meditation, yoga, at night dreams, many ways to have that same experience. The beauty about past life regression is just we start out with, okay, I want to know about this, and we go there. Like I say, it's hypnosis with steering wheel. We're going there. We're gonna get your answers for you.
Got it. Um, where can everyone find that somatic channeling? Because that
Yeah,
sounds really
just
interesting.
Google that, or the teacher of it is named Bratches, Bratches, Taylor Bratches. She's wonderful. And she's a pioneer in this. You won't find any other. So that's why I say just Google somatic channeling and you'll find it. She's headquartered in Boulder, down the road here. And it just really is quite a mystic herself, but not at all pretentious.
Mhm. No, I think this is good. I think, I feel like this message keeps coming through of just getting quiet, listening, we have to make time to do that because our society is just go, go,
Mhm.
go, fast paced. But um, if you can slow down, I think that gives you so much insight and
Yes.
like you're
Yes.
saying, the path towards finding out what that purpose is
Yes.
and being able to take at least the first step or the like I don't think, and that's another thing, maybe you can clarify this too, but I think people expect that, oh, I'm just going to know the whole path and everything's going to be revealed at once. And it's like little breadcrumbs, right? Like
Yes,
step by
yes, Hansel
step
and
to the
Gretel.
answer.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree. It's like Hansel and Gretel. We'll
Yeah.
give you a few here and there, and then we go because if we knew the whole thing, we may not want to go there.
Right.
So we build up, right? We get
Hmm.
ready.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the avoidance of quiet and stillness.
Hmm.
It's getting worse and worse and worse every time you go in a restaurant, a coffee shop. My God, that the music's just blaring. I came here to talk or to think, and that's not going to happen. We need to create those opportunities for ourselves and really nurture that stillness. Part about my motivation behind longing was to create those experiences without being overt about it, not to be covert and hide it, but to be gentle and moving the reader into the experience. So it is much like a hypnotic induction. We say, okay, consider the power of a comet, and I might describe the geophysics of a comet and the beauty of a comet and its short-lived period, relatively speaking, but the period of life that a comet has. And then I start dropping into notice yourself as if you are tailing light. Look over, look behind, see the light you've left. And I move people into the reader into the experience, self-guided, where it's a natural segue in. I don't say lesson one, visualization A, do this, blah, 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 blah. No, it's all part of the writing. So it's seamless. And then it's repeatable. You can always go back and read it if you wish. Those came to me. Those were not, there's one passage in the last chapter that I edited. I think it's probably about 150 words, 200 words. I edited 2 words in that entire passage. And that flowed. And it was one of the last things I received. It was, again, a way of bringing us into that quiet stillness and experiencing the beauty of that, the richness of it.
That sounds amazing. I'm sure that everyone listening wants to go experience that now. So, can you let everyone know where they can find your book and where they can
Yes,
find you and what all
yes.
you have to offer?
Yes, I'd be happy to. My book, Longing, A Pilgrimage to Your Quiet Power Within, is available at Amazon, Barnes and Noble, wherever books are sold. It's distributed through Simon and Schuster. So if you go to their site and drop in Longing Christopher Sansone, it will pop it up and give you multiple avenues to purchase it. To make it simple, you can go to my website and there's a link there. It is livelifesoul.com. Or you can email me at Chris, Chris, Chris at livelifesoul.com. And there's lots of ways to connect with me from there. Be happy to do so. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, I will link all of that in the show notes to make it really easy for everyone as well.
Thank you.
And Chris, thanks so much for coming on. This was such a good conversation. And I feel like we could talk all day, but everyone can go read the book because I don't want to take up any more of your time. But I do appreciate you coming on and sharing all this.
Well, thank you, Stephanie. I really appreciate it. And I too, this has been such an enjoyable experience and so intriguing and I love it. So thank you for this opportunity to be on Law of Attraction. Thank you.
Absolutely. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And I'll see you in the next episode.
Okay.